Hey everyone, I'm back, and today we're going to be talking about Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End. And this movie came out in 2007 and is directed by Gore Verbinski and has just about everybody that you know from the previous two movies that are still alive. And I have mixed feelings on this movie. And before I get into the actual movie, I did see this movie when it came out in theaters. And I remember liking it back then, and from memory, back when I watched this movie in theaters, I remember some of the music and liking it, and I could remember certain scenes and how they were done, and that's about all I could remember. I didn't really remember everything, and I did play the video game Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End, which just combines Dead Man's Chest and At World's End, because basically they're one movie that's just cut in half, because it would be 5.5 hours long if they were one movie. Well, based on like the runtime of Dead Man's Chest and At World's End, because this movie is almost 3 hours long and it doesn't really need to be that long, and the only reason it is that long is because there's so many things going on in this movie, and most of it doesn't matter really. And spoilers for Dead Man's Chest, anything that has not been resolved in that movie is continues on in this movie, like Will Turner trying to free his father, or the relationship between Will Turner and Elizabeth Swann, and a little subplot going on there, and there's a bunch of stuff like that in the movie. And while I'm not upset that it's in this movie, it makes sense that it's in this movie. It's just that it doesn't feel earned when certain things are moving along and you actually see some payoff, and it's kind of unsatisfying for most of it. And the only thing that I kind of liked were the action sequences, and they were kind of fun, and I thought the music was great in this movie. And there's some funny moments that I enjoyed, like moments of comedy that I thought worked well. And one thing that I found to be really strange about this movie is just how seriously it takes itself. And the first movie was really goofy, and it had some serious moments from memory, but the scenes that I think about are the ones that are kind of goofy and silly, and it knows what it is, and it's goofy, and the tone complements these things, and it feels like a Gore Verbinski movie, and he uses the tone of the movie to his advantage, and has like all these goofy things, but it makes sense why they're there. But in this and Dead Man's Chest, the comedy isn't really coming from the tone, it's just coming from the writing. And while there's nothing wrong with that particularly, it's just that I don't feel as much for it. And I said this in my review for Dead Man's Chest, it felt less like comedy from a Gore Verbinski movie and more like a Disney movie putting in jokes like the MCU does, and it was kind of distracting for most of it. And that's not to say that I never laughed at all when it came to the comedy. There were some funny moments, but it's very few, and most of it came from the last act of the movie, and that's not good. I thought the performances in this movie were really good, to go back to positives, and they do a good job, and they have things to work with, but overall it kind of feels like there's too much going on. And the first 30 minutes I was starting to get a headache because I was just trying to process everything that was going on. I was like, oh my god, what are we doing here? Just slow down. We don't need this much going on. And there's too many characters in this movie, and I feel that you could cut some of them out. You wouldn't lose anything because of that, and it would just benefit the movie, and it's just to have more stuff going on, and it doesn't really matter. And while there are some things that I liked with this gigantic pile of characters that this movie throws in, it was too much for me. And this movie just doesn't need to be as long as it is. And one thing that really disappointed me about this movie is that the relationship between Will Turner and Elizabeth Swann, they had no chemistry in this movie, and I never felt as though those characters loved each other. And they have 3 scenes where they're supposed to have a romantic interest or something with each other, and I felt nothing. And it's just so sad because towards the end of the movie, it's asking you to care, and the music does like all of the work, whereas the writing, it does none of the work because I'm just not invested in what's going on. I did like the comedy between Captain Jack Sparrow and Captain Barbossa as to like who's in charge of the Black Pearl, and that was kind of a funny joke, and that goes on throughout the whole movie, and it was fun to watch. The special effects in this movie mostly held up. There were a couple of moments where it doesn't look great, but for the most part, I feel as though they still held up. And to say one more positive about the movie, I don't know how they did it, but I was never bored throughout the whole movie. It accomplished that. I was not expecting to be entertained throughout the whole movie, but it pulled it off. So I'll give the movie 1 point for that. I was not bored in a nearly 3-hour long movie that doesn't need to be 3 hours long. And that's about all I have to say about Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End. It's fine. It's kind of a step down from Dead Man's Chest, and not that that movie was great, but I could watch that movie again, and I could watch this movie again. And even though there are plenty of things that are unsatisfying about it, and things that I just don't like at all, and there's too many characters and too much going on to the point where it gives me a headache, and it just doesn't give enough time to develop things that I would love to see, and it just gives you a little bit of everything, whereas if you cut stuff down, then you would get more of specific things. And this movie is just trying to do too much at once, and it doesn't always succeed. But at the same time, I'll still rewatch this movie along with the first two Pirates movies, because if you've seen Dead Man's Chest, then you kind of have to watch this movie, because Dead Man's Chest is part 1, this is kind of part 2, so there's that. You're kind of obligated to finish it. And with all that being said, I'm going to give Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End a 5 out of 10. Thank you for watching my videos as always. If you enjoyed this review, be sure to leave a like and comment down below you thought of Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End, and my social media links, they will all be in the description, so follow me there. And last but not least, subscribe to be a part of Foley Nation, and I'll see you when I get my next review up, and that is going to be for Anchorman 2. So look forward to that, but until I get that up, thank you for watching and have a great day.